Well, the elaborate ceremony that is a Supreme Court nomination hearing continued today. Boy, did it. As is tradition, Judge Neil Gorsuch presented himself as a neutral arbiter of the law and would not expose his own thoughts on any contentious issue. Republicans played their part in the ritual by heaping praise on the nominee, while Democrats played the opposite role by aggressively questioning him at every turn.
I had a career in identifying absurdity. And I know it when I see it.
Would the president have the authority to ban all Jews from the United States or all people that come from Israel?
How do we have confidence in you that you won't just be for the big corporations, that you will be for the little men?
Had you ever met President Trump personally?
Not until my interview.
In that interview, did he ever ask you to overrule Roe v. Wade?
No, Senator.
What would he have done if he'd asked?
Senator, I would have walked out the door.
Well, the hearing finally ended just a half hour ago. Jasmine Rand is an attorney in Miami who opposes the Gorsuch nomination. Carrie Severino is chief counsel and policy director at the Judicial Crisis Network, which supports him. They both join us tonight. Jasmine, first to you, is Gorsuch qualified to sit on the Supreme Court?
I think that there's no doubt that his past experiences and his education make him qualified to sit on the Supreme Court. But I think when we're looking at a candidate, we can't just look at whether or not they're qualified, but whether or not they're going to apply the laws of our land in an equitable manner. And I think that's where the problem lies with his nomination.
So he's qualified, but he shouldn't be allowed to sit on the Supreme Court. Carrie, do you think that he is the best possible nominee that President Trump could have found for this open seat on the Supreme Court?
Oh, I think he's an amazing choice. And not just because, as we've commented on, he's very well qualified for this, but there is more to it. There's making sure someone has a approach to the Constitution that's faithful to its original understanding, that's faithful to the text of the laws. And he showed that today in spades. He talked a lot about the importance of judicial independence, the importance of putting law before politics, and that all judges are going to come to decisions they don't like some of the time, and it's your job as a judge to make sure you're following the law and not putting your personal politics first. So I think all of those things are the reason he has really the broad bipartisan support, except among senators, right? The Democratic senators don't love him so much, but people like Neil Katyal, Obama's acting SG, introduced him, talked about what a fair-minded judge he is. I think he has broad support like that in Colorado as well, people who know him best.
Well, Jasmine, isn't that sort of what you want? I mean, I heard senator after senator today say, in effect, I don't like the conclusion that you reached. And I saw Judge Gorsuch say a couple of times, I don't really like the conclusion I reached either. Or perhaps I don't like it. I'm not revealing what I think. But it's possible I don't agree with my own decision, but it's consistent with the law. And that's my job, is to evaluate the law in terms of the Constitution. Why is that out of bounds?
I mean, I think the problem is that he's been very evasive in a lot of his answers, and I think that he's trying to appeal to that bipartisan support. The biggest problem I have with one of the answers he gave when he wrote a speech for the former Attorney General Gonzalez that concerned national security and whether or not the president has the right to surveil our citizens without a warrant in the interest of national security. And he said, I didn't believe what I was writing at the time. I was just a scribe. I mean, just a scribe when we're writing a speech about our national security. Isn't that what he's doing now? Applying to be essentially the scribe-in-chief of our nation, to write opinions that are going to found the laws and principles for our entire nation. So if he was writing things he didn't believe then, how can we trust him to write what he believes to be the truth, to uphold our Constitution now?
Well, perhaps because being a speechwriter and a Supreme Court justice are entirely different jobs. But I wonder, Carrie, I mean, the concern maybe for conservatives is you've seen a parade really over the years of purportedly conservative justices appointed to the court who then become activist liberals. David Souter comes to mind. There are others. How do we know that's not going to happen here?
Well, he's got something that someone like Souter or frankly even Chief Justice Roberts didn't have, and that's an over decade-long time on the bench. So you can see the decisions he's made over and over again, applying those same principles. He doesn't just know how to mouth them. Everyone knows what they want to hear at the hearing. So you could easily just say, oh, of course, I'll follow the law, I'll follow the Constitution. But he has that record to prove it, and to prove it in cases where he was getting political pressure, was getting, people who are going to, frankly, have taken him to task at this time, saying, we don't like the result you reached. But at the end of the day, it's about coming to the right legal result. And the fact that he's done it for 10 years is, I think great evidence that that's something that he's going to continue on the court.
So, Jasmine, this judge is going to sit on the Supreme Court, I think, no matter what. But my question to you is, Democrats are putting on a show of fighting his nomination. Can you imagine a judge, a conservative judge, who you'd support? Is there anyone Donald Trump could realistically nominate who you would say, okay, I support this guy?
I can't think of a conservative judge off the top of my head that I would support. I can think of a judge who would be more bipartisan, a judge who hasn't written entire articles about how he doesn't support liberal positions. And then while he's being interviewed, recant that position that he originally took, saying he shouldn't have taken such a strong position that took a position against just liberals. So I think that we can find a judge that's more fair, that's more equitable. We can agree on one point that he will remain conservative. He has an incredible track record of finding in favor of corporations over working class people, working class men and women, and over environmental protection issues. And I think we're going to see the same thing. What does that mean when he becomes a Supreme Court justice? That means he's going to find for, Trump Towers over the men and women that built it and the land that it was built upon.
I can't wait to see that case. Jasmine, Carey, thanks for joining us both. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.